welcome back to another episode of Conversations with Jen, where I am speaking to different people to educate you guys and raise awareness of sickle cell. My next guest is a fashionista. She is amazing. And as always, I'm going to ask her to introduce yourself to everyone and let us know what you do.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Jenica. This is so much fun. It's always good vibes. So my name is Barbara Viosa. I'm a fashion designer. I'm also a sickle cell warrior. Woohoo. And my passion has always been fashion. So with my brand, I always try to use it as a platform to kind of spread awareness for sickle cell and just talk about my experience of growing up in sickle cell, especially within the fashion side of things. Like growing up, I never really had anyone in my schools or colleges or my fashion internships who knew what sickle cell was or understood what it was. So that's why I'm always trying to promote it, especially in that realm.
Amazing. So I want to get into that. So you're a sickle cell warrior, of course. Can you tell me, like, what's your HB status?
So is that like the SS?
Yeah, like, are you SS, SC?
So SS, I know I've always been the full-blown.
Yeah, full-blown. So you're SS. What has your journey with sickle cell been like? So, like, when did you know you have sickle cell? Did your parents know when you were born? Like, who in your family? Like, just give me, like, the journey of, like, baby Barbara.
Baby Barbara. Okay, so I'm the last child. So I have two older siblings. And my mum also had, like, a miscarriage. So there was one meant to be, I thought, after my sister, before me, I think, yeah. So, and so they don't, well, my sister has trait, but my brother doesn't have sickle cell. And my mum knew, because my uncle, who sadly passed away, and I created the foundation for him, Uncle Gideon. So he had sickle cell, and his was really bad because he was born in Nigeria, and I guess my mum told me that, like, they would give him, like, my granddad, who had obviously the trait, was giving him blood transfusions because they didn't really know, and I don't think that's quite helpful because it's the sickling blood. So and then he did move to the UK when he was 10, and my mum was looking after him because there's a huge age gap. She's like one of the first children, and he's like the last.
Right.
And like they have like 11 or so siblings.
Wow.
So like there was like a 20-year age gap. So growing up, he was like a younger brother, mainly to my older siblings, because by the time I was born, I don't think he was still living with us.
Right.
And so I was diagnosed around like the age of 4. So it was kind of a late, so I did have it, but I guess I didn't have any of the symptoms until I was 4. And there's a theory which is so embarrassing. I've spoken this with my mom. And she breastfed me to a very long period, till like I was like 4 years old. And she till this day is like, I think that's why you never had any symptoms. Or
you had that good milk.
So she's always like, yeah. So, and then also because of what she went through with my uncle and how she saw how bad his one was, he did rely on a lot of like really strong medication. So growing up, she hated me taking medication. It was like always a last resort. Even going to hospital, like even after being diagnosed, I remember like, I guess from 5 to kind of 8, I was in and out of like pediatrics hospital, like the children's hospital. And it was fun for me. Like I would go there and I'd play PlayStation. They'd had Nintendo. They had nursery nurses, and everything was super nice. And then I stopped going from like 8 till 16. So I didn't really go to hospital. And I remember. So my mom used to do a lot of like holistic type of like, she would make banana tea. She researched it. So when she was at university, she did a dissertation. So she really studied sickle cell because she didn't want the same. She saw at the time her brother, he was just relying on like really strong medication and then just kind of going to hospital. Whereas when I was younger, I just remember like, when I was in pain, when I had crisis, I wouldn't go to school, and she would put me in her room, and there would be like Disney Channel on or
just
something.
Like keeping you distracted.
And I'd have hot water bottles. She'd make the banana tea, water, and would start with like ibuprofen and smaller medications. Wow. And I think I learned to like bear the pain, like instead of just like having a crisis and straight away going to the hospital. The only time we really did that was if I had a temperature, because they know like it's like a fever and there's some sort of infection or something causing it that needs to obviously be stopped. But if it was just like an arm or wrist pain or something, leg pain, we would be like, she would like just stay at home. And so I got used to that. Even when I got older, it was like I was able to manage the pain at home a bit more. So even though I missed time off school, it was like I was always managing it at home, unless like I remember when I turned 16, so I was starting getting more hormonal changes. And so the crises were coming in like my chest and back. And even though I had chest pain like before that period, like these were like really bad, severe. Like severe ones. And I remember, and at this stage I was getting like oral morph at home. So I was getting like other medications, and my doctors were kind of like, oh, we can prescribe you some stuff that you can do at home because you're like managing it okay. Because I would have like my 6 monthly
reviews
and stuff. And I remember at 16, it was like every month with my menstrual cycle, it was coming, and then I would cry, and it would be like this whole thing of like taking oral morph and then having to go to A&E. So I was going to A&E and then having like being there for 2 weeks, and then I started to think, oh my God, was that just like a grace period? Is this going to be my life
Is this
now?
Going forward?
And I remember one time I was the same thing, had a crisis menstrual cycle, and then I was crying before I took my medicine. And I grew up with because I was the youngest, and my family is just very like tough and strong. I remember my sister just one night just kind of like, just stop, just take the oral morph.
Stop crying.
Yeah, she's like, take it and it will work. Like, give it 30 minutes. And then it helped. You take it and then it relaxes your body a bit. And at that stage, it was like, we started to just pray and just be like, if this is a trigger, what can we do about it? So around that period, I stopped. I wouldn't go out with friends. Like that specific week, I'd be like, oh, I can't come to this. I'll see you next week. Yeah. And it really helped. Like that's still what I do.
It's so interesting that you say that, because I was a lot older, probably well into my 20s before I kind of realised the correlation between my period, when I was going to be due on, and like the crisis. Yeah. And I did the same thing. Like as soon as I started to use like an app tracker, and as soon as I knew like, right, next week's around the time, I just wouldn't do too much. Yeah. I just made sure that I was like over drinking a lot of fluids, like more than normal, and just resting, and it really helped.
Yeah, it's such a huge difference, and that's why I'm always like, listen to your body, because I know there's like really serious complications, and you can't just always be like, oh, just listen and stuff like that, because it is unpredictable. But I think knowing your body and knowing your triggers, it makes a difference, because I noticed that if I went out during that period, even just a little bit of wind, I would have like chest pain. Yeah. But on a normal part of the month, and I went out and I had a little bit of wind, I'll be fine. So there's a huge difference. And then I noticed that most of the crises were coming around that time. So I thought, well, if I'm safe at home, just taking it easy, relaxing, then it's less likely that I'm going to get a crisis.
It's crazy that I had a conversation with someone else, and they said they noticed that when they were at home, they were well. And it was only kind of like being outdoors, being in like really crowded environments and stuff like that, that kind of would trigger like infections and, just those things to your immune system. Yeah. On the topic of kind of like you being, at that age where you started to manage your pain and stuff, were there any other complications that you've actually experienced like as a result of sickle cell, or have you just been quite well?
When you say complications, like
acute chest syndrome, or like having strokes or spleen problems, like have you generally just had crisis pain? Yeah,
it's only ever been crisis, and I've only had 2 blood transfusions in my whole life, and that was something. I think the first time I had it when I was like 24, and then I had it like a few years ago. And the 24 thing was really weird, because it was like, I think we spoke about it on the podcast. It was, so I'd been like doing fashion for years, and like really kind of like doing fashion shows and working on adrenaline and using so much energy. And it was when I was living in Paris, and when I moved back to London, I was kind of depressed, and I just slept for 2 months. After that, I had a massive crisis, and I had my blood level went down to like 5. And I was telling my doctor, I was like, it's because like my body's, I think I'm used to adrenaline and excitement.
I'm too relaxed now.
Yeah.
My body doesn't know what to do.
And that's why I was like, fashion has really helped me. And that's why like my whole thing is like having something that you're passionate about. Because even during those periods, like being 16 and stuff, and missing time off school, fashion was always kind of my hope and my, like that thing that I had that I could look forward to and that I could do. Like even if I missed 2 months of school, I could work from home. Yes. And then it continued to build, like, instead of being like sad or not feeling sorry, but like feeling like you don't have a future, I always felt like fashion is like the one thing I can do anywhere in the world. Like I used to I would carry my sewing machine in my suitcase when I would travel and live in different places. So it was like always with me, and I could do.
It's so good though. But talk to me more about that. So in terms of like you and your fashion journey, then when did that start? And was it, you know, to kind of, when you was feeling unwell and isolated, was that something that you picked up along the way, or what motivated you to kind of get into that?
Yeah, definitely. So growing up, my mum owned a clothing boutique in North London. So it was like buying and selling, but then she also had tailors who would make like custom clothing specifically for like African clients. So it would be like laces and stuff like that for like special occasions. And so I was always around that kind of environment, like with seeing the tailors, how they would work. And I remember being around 10 years old and being like just excited, like making stuff and showing me how to do stuff. And so like that was really a big inspiration. And then also my mom, being born and raised in London, but then like in the household it was like Nigerian parents and like seeing them go to like Nigerian parties and how she would dress up with all these colours and
oh my gosh, because you guys like dress. When we talk about dressing, I went to a gala recently and like I was like, is this dress too much? Hey, I was underdressed for you guys. The laces, the sequins, like everything.
Yeah, so I grew up around that, and I loved that, like the colours, the details, and it made me really just like proud of like my culture and that, and something that I knew that I was really interested in. Because funny enough, when I was really young, because I was always in hospital with like the nursery nurses and all that stuff, and I had a good time, I always used to tell my parents, I want to be a doctor. So they were getting excited because Nigerian people are always like, oh, we want you to be a doctor or lawyer. So when I actually passed that stage and I was like, I want to do fashion now, my mum was kind of like, oh.
What was that reaction like?
But they were a bit like, what happened to thingy?
What happened to the doctor?
Like, I don't really want to be in the hospital if I don't need to be and stuff. And then fashion. So I remember like when I was going in and out of hospital, I would always ask my mum to bring a sketchbook. So I would like draw and stuff like that and it would take my mind off, especially when I started going to the adult hospitals and then the nurses weren't nice. And it was like completely different treatment. Like when you're under 16, it's like so nice. You're like, what do you want to do today? And then when you're old, it's like you have all these grumpy nurses who are just like really rude, and you're like yeah. And so the hospital became like kind of sour, but having like the fashion thing, like I would just bring my sketchbook. I would be like, okay, when I'm well, like right now I'm physically restricted and I can't do something, but when I am well, I can do whatever. Like, and I felt like I wasn't limited, like, because right now I'm restricted and I'm unwell, but staying well became a priority. So taking care of myself meant that I could do the things I love, which was fashion. So having that hope, I think if I didn't have that and I was just always in hospital, it would kind of maybe dampen it, and you just kind of get into a place where you're like kind of negative and stuff. Whereas I felt fashion really kind of gave me excitement and hope, because I actually really love it. Like I love designing, I love making.
And talk to me about, so your brand it's Dumabai?
Dumabai, yeah.
Yes, I got it right.
Yeah.
So your brand is Dumabai. When did you launch your brand, and how have you kind of brought sickle cell and your journey with sickle cell into your creating and pieces and stuff like that?
Okay, great. So with Dumabai, it officially kind of launched, I would say 2017, but I didn't register it like as a company until like 2019. And those first 2 years were like me just kind of doing fashion shows and events and stuff like that.
Amazing. So where does the name come from? Sorry.
So it's actually my Nigerian name, which is Dumabi. So you probably know the song.
See, because when I first seen it, I thought it was Dumabi, and I kept saying that, but it was actually Dumabai. So I was like, oh, I'm getting it wrong.
So funny. When I was younger, and like everyone knew I wanted to do fashion and stuff, and then one of my uncles was like, you should name. He was like, you should name it Dumabi, or like your Nigerian name. And then he joked like, oh, like European people will pronounce it like Dumabai. And then we kind of joked, because I remember I don't know if it was Christmas or a time when we were just hanging out, and I laughed and I was like, oh my God, that sounds so good, I'm going to use it. And then literally when it came, I was like, it's Dumabai.
It's Dumabai, darling. Okay, then, so Dumabai. Sorry, because I interrupted you.
Oh, no, so it's fine. And so my fashion journey, because literally from 16 onwards, it's always kind of been with me, because I was able to do like a fashion and clothing course, and like then I was able to go to uni, and I think it's always been with me. I would say like pushing me and inspiring me to that I have a bright future, and there's something that I can do that sickle cell can't stop me from doing. So I think that's why it's so important. And with my fashion journey, even like, so I studied in New York for 1 year before moving to Paris, where I graduated. And even when I lived in New York, I did go to the hospital at one point. And
what was that like?
That was a real experience, because it was the first time living alone and being in a completely different country. So it was like, at first, I'm actually shocked looking back, like that my parents were, well, they weren't just okay with it. Like, my mum came with me for the first 6 weeks. She stayed in the dorm. We were lucky to get a dorm where I had my own room, and I only had one roommate who happened to be Nigerian, because when they first put me in a room where it was like you're sharing with 4 other people, and 2 of the girls kept opening the window, and I was like, no, I can't. So my mum went straight to the school and was like, she has sickle cell, she needs to be in a closed place where she can have her own temperature and stuff. So having my mum come for the first 6 weeks was really good, because it helped me adapt to just like the neighborhood. But I think also having so much time at home and working on fashion, because even when you're just in hospital for like 1 or 2 weeks, the recovery time could be an extra month, because you're like, you need to be strong enough to get back into it. So it's like, with that, I think I became very independent. Like, I didn't feel like I love, friends are great, and like I love friends and I like having people around, but I actually realized that I didn't need to have people around all the time. And I actually became a person who I was like, actually like being, I definitely am an extrovert, but I'm actually okay being by myself.
That's me.
And so, so being in, that really built up being my independence, because I could, not only could I work on the things that I wanted on myself, but I didn't mind when I missed off school. Like, it became something that I was like, the people that are going to be in your life will always be in your life, and they will understand. And so with that, it was easy for me to travel to another country and live, and I actually was excited about it. Like, even though I was like still in contact with some of my friends, it was still like, I became so independent that I was like, I can live anywhere in the world. And again, sickle cell is not going to stop me. The first experience, going to hospital was, I wasn't scared. I think it was just the medication was a bit different. Like, they didn't have thiamorphine, which is what I use when it's really bad and I have to go to the hospital. And they were really shocked when I asked for that. Like, they were kind of like, because it's heroin. How dare you? So they were like, what the? And then, New York, there's like addicts and but there's that there everywhere.
But it's common, right? Because they do say, like, a lot of people have experienced that, where they've been into hospital and it's like they've been accused of drug seeking and stuff like that.
So that was, I guess it was shocking, because they're like, why is this girl asking for like this? And I can't remember what they ended up giving me. I guess it worked, but I was there for 2 weeks and I caught pneumonia. And I remember the patient next to me had pneumonia. So when I got it like a few days later, I was like, she gave it to me. Like, hello.
I got it there. Hello.
Yeah, I got it in the hospital. And that was quite scary, because I thought like it could get into escalate, but it was really mild. So it was just like I was given like a type of antibiotics or something. But
that's so good.
Yeah, but I think it was really hard for my mum, because I remember her calling me every day and she was like wanting to book a ticket, and I was like, you can't come all the way to New York just for like
for me to be in hospital.
Like, unless it's like really bad, then. But I think
Would you say that you've always had that kind of independence then? Like, for a lot of people, going to like going on holiday alone is like, should I, shouldn't I? Can we fly? Can we travel? Because growing up in the UK, a lot of people are told a lot of things that they shouldn't do or that should stay away from, which I know one of them is like flying and, high altitude and stuff like that. Did you not have any fears at all, where you just kind of like, I'm going to do this?
No, it wasn't so much not having fears. I think it was just like, I've always been, having sickle cell has made me want to just live my life to the fullest. Like, being able to wake up with no pain is such a blessing that I'm not going to take it for granted. So I think like that was like, New York became like a dream for me. And so that kind of excitement overtook, I would say, like my fear. And then also just being able to manage at that stage, because I was like 19. So at that stage, I was really learning about my body. So I already knew that my menstrual cycle was a trigger, and that I think at that time I was kind of confident with the management of my sickle cell at that time. And so I think because and then also we're very like prayer people, like so we believe in God. And I remember my mom told me, like, when I was 5, I prayed so God could like heal me from sickle cell. So honestly, I actually believe, obviously there's no healing, there's no like what's that word,
like what?
There's no cure. and I still obviously get crisis, but I do feel like I'm healed to an extent where I can still live my life.
You can do what you
and
do.
So when you have faith, you kind of just have to go with it. And so I think it was mainly more a lot of like faith, like prayer. Like whenever I want to do any kind of thing, we pray about it and then we do it, because it's like faith and works. Like
exactly.
Some people think you
together.
people think you just sit down and pray and then
just
you just sit on your couch. Like you have to actually make steps. So we pray about it, then we make steps, and if it is meant to be, then God will open that door. And so like when the door opened, like I got into the school, it was a really hard school to get into. So when I got into it, I was kind of like, okay, let's do it. Yeah.
So your brand now, Dumabai, you of course have set up a foundation as well, Gideon's Treasure, and you've kind of been able to merge the two together. So whatever you do in your fashion line, it also kind of helps to contribute to Gideon's Treasure. So talk to me about, you know, the foundation and all of that.
Okay, yeah. So since launching the brand, so I was just doing fashion, and I actually wasn't as vocal as like I've been for the last few years before, because I created the foundation like 2021.
Right.
And it was 10 years since my uncle passed away. So we were really close, and it was just, we were close, and then we were also like close because obviously he was the only one in the immediate family that had sickle cell. And he was like, because he was the youngest uncle, and closer to like, not close, he was still like 10 years older than my brother also, or more, but still
close
like, but close, yeah. So that he was like the cool, fun uncle. He was like great. Like we'd always go over to his house and like play, and he always had like all the cool games and stuff like that. So he was like so it was really sad like when it happened, and still now. So I wanted to do something to honor him, and because fashion has been such a beacon of hope for me, I wanted to be able to do that for other people, especially like having something, a craft or skill or something that you're passionate about. And like I know like with like one of our main things with Gideon's Treasure was spreading awareness. So it was like we've done like galas and like fashion shows and stuff like that, which combine the fashion and the foundation. And with like the fashion industry is very influential, so like magazines and all this kind of stuff, and especially where so I'm part of the British Fashion Council, and so we also have a profile on London Fashion Week, and so we can do shows during
have you done shows in Fashion Week?
Yeah, so we did last year we did more shows, so we did one in February
2022,
2022, 2021, like we did actually the Gideon's Treasure Gala, which was a London Fashion Week fashion show and gala, which was like the inaugural event for Gideon's Treasure.
Amazing.
So we did that September 2021, and it was really good turnout. We did like a short film about sickle cell and got people to like learn a bit more about it. We want to try and see a different format, because Fashion Week is very like fast paced and people just want to come see the fashion show and then leave. So we're trying to see for this season to do something a bit different for Fashion Week and see how that goes. But yeah, so being part of that gives us a platform and gives us like, we've had like so many influencers and stuff attend our events and like magazine publications. So what I'm trying to do is really just use the fashion brand and the fashion industry to kind of spread awareness for sickle cell, because I think not a lot of people in the fashion industry talk about sickle cell.
Not at all.
So that's what we're trying to really push, and like try to get like bigger magazines and bigger like celebrities, maybe endorsements, and so that's kind of the future of that. And the other part of it was the workshops. So we want to create free creative workshops. We're trying to do it during the summer, because we know how with sickle cell patients nobody wants to go out in the winter.
We're trying to leave in the winter.
Yeah, London is mainly winter. So we're trying to maybe for next summer to do this, and it will be like free, completely funded by the brand, and so like they can learn different skills from like fashion, like so sewing to art, so different types of stuff that could just be like, and it's also a way of building community, because I didn't know anyone growing up with sickle cell. I'm literally meeting people like on social media like almost every day now, but before I was part of a support group like when I was 18, but I think we spoke about this, how it was like a lot of older people, and sometimes it was kind of negative.
Yeah, quite negative in their experience or what they've been through. So kind of, I think it's so important to kind of like build your own tribe, which you said. So finding people that are positive, that they have sickle cell, but they're still doing things like you are. And it's just, you know.
And having that kind of mindset, because it's not like the people there were still lovely. I still in communication with some people. It was just like So I don't think their message was to be negative. It was just, it wasn't so much about like, we're trying to show like you can do more and there's like positivity, there's a future and stuff like that.
Talk to me about your podcast, Sliving with Sickle Cell.
Yay! So the Sliving with Sickle Cell podcast is a new addition to the Gideon's Treasure Foundation and another way of bridging the gap between kind of the fashion and the brand. So the podcast is both sponsored by like my brand and Gideon's Treasure, and it was a way of me kind of being able to share stories, to shine a light, and to also just shine a light on the amazing and incredible warriors around the world who are doing epic stuff. Because sometimes when people think of, oh, you have a health condition, you have a disability, there's just this sense of that, just, I don't know, not a sense of feeling sorry, but just kind of like, oh, they're just there, probably just in hospital. And it's like, no, we're so much more than that. And that our health condition doesn't define us. Yeah. So the sliving means like slaying and living your best life with sickle cell. And, yes, I'm talking to another sliving queen.
Slay, darling, slay.
Who is slaying. So it's like, so definitely you were one of the first guests, because I was like, she's doing some amazing stuff. And I think we're all very like strong, powerful people that are doing amazing things. And I thought it was really good way of people to, learn about these stories. And I think podcasts, because I was listening to a lot of podcasts, and like I use it for like sometimes when I'm sewing, instead of listening to music, I'll listen to like podcasts, and they're mainly like entrepreneur and business ones, and I remember it just really motivating me. So when I was thinking of creating Sliving with Sickle Cell, I was like, I want it to also be kind of like entrepreneurial, so there's some sense of like seeing how starting a business, a project, and having a disability and the struggles and how you can overcome them. And so mainly it's sickle cell patients, but we've had some people with other chronic illnesses. We've had some people with traits. I've also had like my mum and my sister on there to talk about what's it like living with having like a sibling or a child with sickle cell, just to see like, it's so much people and, different aspects are kind of affected by it. And then, and just like, shining that like we are incredible people and our story should be shared.
We are. I love that, and I love the podcast. Of course, I have been listening. I have some catching up to do. Yes, but I have been listening, and like you said, the angle of speaking to people who, yes, they have a condition, but they're still doing things, they're entrepreneurial, they're doing projects and successfully doing them as well. It is quite motivating to know that there are other people out there that, are not letting their disability define who they are. So
definitely.
I love that.
Yay.
You mentioned that you have had 2 blood transfusions. And of course, in the UK, there's, been a lot of kind of talk and, promotion, I guess, around encouraging people to donate blood and specifically Black people donating blood. What's your stance on kind of that call to action and, people donating or not donating? Like, how do you feel about that? Being someone that's had transfusion.
I think it's very important because, of course, even though I don't get it regularly and I know like a lot of people rely on this, still at that moment, it was still something that I needed because God forbid, we don't know what could happen. So it's very important for everyone with sickle cell, even if they rarely get it or they're on like regular treatments. I think that it's so important. And I think with a lot of things within, this is going to be, I was going to say with a lot of things with the Black community, sometimes
sometimes it is.
Sometimes it's
say it how it is.
I feel like they don't really join in on like stuff unless it's always like directly, because I feel like you would have like random people like, I do this, other races, and you're just like, oh, and you're kind of like, do you know anyone that needs this? And like, no, I just donate, just for the sake of donating.
It's a good thing to do.
Think in our culture, we're just like, and I don't think it's even like coming from a negative place. I think it's just, unless we're actually like really told and we know somebody, I don't think it's always like within our agenda so much. And then with something like sickle cell, which is so dependent on it, I think it should be, really kind of told, like even if you're just going in for a random checkup with your doctor, somebody should be like, oh, by the way, have you thought about blood donations? Because again, if you're not, obviously I have sickle cell, so no one's really asked me about blood donations and stuff, because I don't know if I don't think we can.
As a full-blown sickle cell, no, but people that have the trait can actually donate. But the blood may not go to someone with sickle cell, of course. Well, it won't, but you know, if they donate, then it just means that there's an extra bag of blood for someone else. So I kind of always feel like it's just like, you know, it still helps. Yeah. Regardless.
Yeah. And I don't think most people aren't really kind of like pushed about it. Like, I have to double check, because I know at my doctor's appointment it'll be very random if they were like, do you want to
have you thought about it?
But I don't think my siblings have either.
That's a good suggestion, you know, just like kind of dropping it into, you know, everyday life or everyday things that we have to do. Like, have you thought about it? Yeah. That's a good, I like that. I'm gonna, because we do a lot around kind of trying to encourage donation. We have campaigns and stuff. That's a good thing to do. Yeah. So I might slip it in there
every appointment. Like if they're coming for like a cold or something, and they're like, by the way.
I have been trying to slip it into all of my conversations actually. If it's someone that doesn't have sickle, I'm like, do you donate? By the way, completely irrelevant, but still.
It is true.
Very, very important. Okay, so before we kind of wrap up, do you have, well, not do you, what would you say, or what piece of advice would you give to anyone who is living with sickle cell and, you know, just kind of navigating this world? What would you say to them?
My biggest thing that I'm always like kind of, I would say, advocating for is, you know, listen to your body. I think that is the number one thing, and that's like with my upbringing, it's really just been like really kind of understanding what your triggers are. And I know that sometimes it can be difficult if like there are complications, because I don't know if like complications, just I've tried to like ask about, like I even had a recent appointment with my doctor, my hematology doctor, because I'm having a camera going down my throat because I've been having like tummy issues. It's on Friday. I'm like so scared. My mom was like, it's a normal procedure.
It's
but I'm
normal.
Like, they want to put in sedation, and I'm like, but anyway,
You'll be fine.
So I actually asked him, because during the Living with Sickle Cell podcast, a lot of people I spoke to, including yourself, had a vascular necrosis, and I actually had to ask him. I was like, is there a sign? Is there? And he basically said there's not really a sign. So with stuff like that, it's really hard, like with listening to your body, I think. But then he did say that something about the less crisis you have, the less is meant to can trigger it. So in that sense, it could just be like avoiding crisis as much as possible, and that again comes into like listening to your body. And like if you know, like I know it's hard, especially for younger, like in your teenage years, and you want to go out with your friends, but just always remember, like for me, I was kind of like a bougie kid. Like I wouldn't want to go out.
She's still bougie, guys. I was a bougie kid. She's still bougie.
like if they were like, yeah, let's go and have like a vodka in the park, and it's like 10 degrees or 5 degrees. Yeah, like, I'm like, why? No, like I'm good. I'll see you on Monday. Like, and then a lot of people have peer pressure, and I'm like, I just never had peer pressure, because I was just like, I don't want to be in hospital. And I know it's hard, because
but that's the reality though, right? It's like, think about the decisions you're making, because at the end of the day, you're the one that's going to have to, you know, deal with it.
You're the one that's suffering for X amount of time. So it's just like, sometimes you have to, I know, like, but you can always do something the following week, which is like cinema or somewhere indoors, or even though I've had crises at cinema, you never know. But now, even till today, I carry like load with me. So I have cardigans,
the blanket, the cardigan.
I've socked, like,
can't play with the air conditioning in the cinemas, honestly.
I even sometimes complain. I'm like, somebody needs to turn this. Yeah, but I'm always terrible. Like wrapped up. Like everywhere I go, there's like an extra cardigan, an extra thing, because I'm just like, I'm not getting a crisis for something that can be prevented, especially like cold and stuff like that. So I think just being extra cautious. I know it's annoying to go out at night with a bodycon, and then you're like carrying this coat, but I'm like, people will see your body inside.
Yeah, it's worth it. It's worth staying warm. Definitely. So. And finally, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, I do have one question. So do you have a new book coming out?
I do have a new book coming out. So, of course, the My Friend Jen books are part of a series, and the series is still ongoing. Okay, nice. I think I've just been busy with, like, everything else, gala, this, and just, you know, life itself, sliving. I haven't quite, you know, put any like real time into like when we're going to release it, how we're going to release it, and stuff like that. But I'm also hopefully bringing out another book, which is not really to do with sickle cell, but more just kind of like about life, positivity,
Yeah.
and just navigating life and being honest with yourself, holding yourself accountable, and you know, that kind of stuff. Just to I don't want to say it's a self-help book because not all of it is about self-help. Some of it's just about like, you know, it's just open and honest. So I had a podcast that I started during lockdown, which was called Salted Popcorn, which is my favourite snack. But also just kind of sharing like just little snacks of life or lessons that I've learned through like being in lockdown and coming out of lockdown and like living in Jamaica and just loads of different things. So I'm hoping to turn that into a book and kind of release that, which I think will be something different and not just entirely focused on sickle cell, and a little bit more of me, I guess, and my kind of energy and life lessons and things like that.
Oh, exciting.
So yeah, did I tell you that I was bringing out a book? I think so. I probably did. Sometimes I just like probably on the podcast, like on your podcast or something, I might have mentioned it, and I'm like, oh, people hold you accountable. I like that. I love it. I love that you've held me accountable. I like that you asked that. Thank you.
And then your current book, it's available on school. Is it available on schools or?
Schools can access it, but it's basically everywhere.
Okay.
And there will be another book in the My Friend Jen series soon.
Yeah.
Just not sure what date, but yeah.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much for coming on. It's been lovely.
Oh my God, it's been so lovely.
And we will keep in touch because, you know.
Yeah, of course. And thank you for having me.
No problem. It's been amazing.